Alright, EA Ermor, turn 45. We received 42 fire gems from Abyssia, so we're going to do an 84 gem cast, which is only 4 gems above the minimum. I do think, there is value in definitely being just above the minimum, but not totally sure how useful it is to dump a ton of gems, especially in a global that's designed to, get you more gems, right? And it just means it's going to take longer for it to pay off. So anyway, we've gone with a close to minimum level of cast, which again, we're going to be splitting with Abyssia because we just don't really have the income or the banked fire gems to cast ourselves. We do finish research in enchantment 6, moving to 7 for that battlefield-wide poison resist spell, which is very important to us, having just gotten gassed. Most of our site searching misses, but we do find a water site in a cave, which is definitely very nice. Water is one of the paths that we're not so strong in. Our Lars get a little bit of it, but not too much. And then we caught a few battles and had 1 or 2 of our own, mostly just raids. This is a little bit interesting because I don't actually think we've seen these Shaitan in use yet. These are of course one of the classic units, or I guess commanders, for Ubar, and they're just up against minimal province defense. No kidding though on them, which is interesting. Not sure offhand. I think in some ages they get summoned in, but I think in early age they might be recruitable, but in all ages they're pretty valuable, so I don't know about risking 2 of them like this ungeared just to raid against some provinces, but it definitely will take a province. So that works out for Ubar, and it's good news. Ubar is not one of our neighbors, but anytime somebody's tied up with underwater, that's usually good news as long as it's not us. Although Ubar does border Niflheim, so if Niflheim is catching this battle, then or any of the other battles, they might be thinking that hey, maybe time to deal with Ubar while they're busy with the underwater stuff. And then we have one of our raids, and this is one of our Augur Elders, just a solo guy since he lost his buddy, and we're just up against some militia that took over a province from TNN. Normally, I don't like attacking, independents in other people's territory, but this particular province connects a lot of other territory that we've raided away, so I do think it's worth it in this case, as we'll, get some additional gem income. That's assuming that this works out for us. The militia are pretty awful. Yeah, there we go, some raised dead. That'll hopefully do the trick, but yeah, we're pretty much fatigued out. Of course, if we die, that's okay, because we're twice born. But Skelly Spam is pretty effective, against militia, and in numbers against a lot of stuff. So this actually works out for us. You just need, 1 Augur Elder. I don't even think, okay, no, this guy is a Death 3, so he's a bit better at Skelly Spam than a lot of other mages out there that can cast it. Since you only need Death 2 to cast Raise Horde of Skeletons, also raised skeletons. And this is Mortality Grasp, and this is the province that I was thinking about when we made the agreement. We just said original borders, and definitely opened my eyes. And I think this is a totally honest mistake, because it's easy to lose track of when you're doing a bunch of raiding. It's like, hang on, what exactly were the original borders? So, I think if you're going to do a peace agreement where you go back to original borders, it's probably worth delineating, exactly in province numbers. It's like, okay, this is, I get this province, this province, this province, you get that province, that province, that province. That way, if there's any disagreement about, what original borders constitutes, you find that out right away, versus later after you've already agreed to a peace, but, you've agreed to different things. In this case, the player was totally reasonable about it. I was like, hey, that was my province. And they're like, whoops. So they moved out. Like I said, I think an honest mistake. Of course, Mortality Grasp is not going to have a problem with just a little bit of Bone Tribe. So that works out for them. Although, it's sad to waste a Pretender turn, in provinces that you're not going to end up holding due to diplomatic agreements. And again, just highlights. It's good to work things out in detail. And then, this is TNN's army moving forward. And then this is just, 1 province defense that we've left behind. And it's all the same stuff. Looking decently scary, right? We do not want to tangle with that until, we have the poison resistance online. That said, I think we've talked about this before. Just bear with me. It's been a second since I've recorded the last of these. Let's see if we get a blessing. Oh wait, no, they're already blessed because the Pretender is present. Yeah, so there is poison resistance on the blessed, right? But there's a lot of Furbolg who are not sacred, so it would be a bit dangerous to combine this army with Foul Vapors. Possible, but yeah, probably not their main move. So if we do have an army fight, probably wouldn't have to worry about foul vapors, although that's definitely not where my head was at. And, that said, it wouldn't be that hard to, kind of move the army out and make it look as if like, yeah, we're going to take an engagement, and then, move the army back. And then especially with the elves and stealthy units, they could spring like a foul vapors trap in place of the army that we thought we would be fighting. So definitely still quite a bit of danger there. And then we catch, this is just a ping from Russ on top of a throne. This throne is not too scary, like pretty light in terms of the mages, although this one does happen to be in a cave, and oh no, Vinemen do not have Spirit Sight. Okay, so Vinemen have pretty awful like attack and defense anyway, and in the cave they're just not going to be able to hit anything. So the dog-headed fellow is a bit scary, but like otherwise a lot of this, the mannequins, yeah, they do have Spirit Sight, so a bit more dangerous than normal. But as thrones go, like, not too bad. So I think we still have a scout there, or maybe an assassin, so we'll hopefully see if there's a battle. And then Machaka is just clearing out a couple random barbarians. Probably somebody failed to remove some barbarians before. I don't think I've ever seen a horde of barbarians that only has 2. Speaking of hordes of barbarians, yeah, we got one coming at us as ever, and then we catch a witch and she curses the land. That's understandable since we probably staked her. That's, I don't know. I don't recall passing that policy, but it just seems to be the default for dominions. And yeah, our province defense here is not going to be able to stop this many barbarians. In case there's any confusion, 6 province defense can do a lot of things, but against 60 barbarians, yeah, not really going to help. We do finish construction of a fortress. This is for our lizard shaman, so we're getting that up pretty late. We do at least have some nature access through our Lars, but definitely more nature access is going to be really useful for us. And then Baratos has been eliminated. Don't really know what happened there. Baratos has a bit of a hard life. So yeah, I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Kind of another quiet turn. We are moving some more units out, more of our sacreds, I believe, and maybe some mages. Yeah, just a little bit of reinforcements. So we still have this group hanging out and patrolling, to deal with like any kind of like foul vapors groups or just raiders that are trying to move into our land. They could, of course, circumvent us by going through like the caves of Agartha, but because of this river, they would actually have to divert, a fair ways away, and they could maybe go through Abyssio's territory, but it's always dangerous to jump on top of a fort, especially one that has troops on top of it, because there's a good chance these troops are patrolling. So I feel like, this is a decent cordon to prevent elves from getting loose in our lands. We don't really want to move the main army out until we get enchantment 7. Unfortunately, we're still probably like 4 turns away from that. Maybe 3 turns if we push out enough mages, and maybe there's some mages that are site searching we can use to research over the next couple turns, make a couple more lanterns. Although we probably aren't going to be making too many lanterns, at least like no lanterns this turn. I'm going to need no fire gems, and we are casting Eternal Pyre with our Pretender. So perhaps in the coming turns, we'll be able to use some of these fire gems to make lanterns, but certainly not this turn. So probably 4 turns, but before we move out, we are at least immediately getting rid of these barbarians. Our army isn't really doing anything, so like, sure, let's just throw it at the barbarians. This is way too much stuff to be using, but especially like flaming arrows, this guy should be researching. I think on overkilling the independents is something that at least I do a lot, but with the number of units that we're bringing, I can tell you I don't remember this particular battle, but we don't need flaming arrows to deal with those 60 barbarians. Barbarians really don't like ranged fire, and javelins particularly tend to deal pretty well with them. But that's not what I did. I sent a mage along, so like, yeah, probably 4 turns for that research goal. Otherwise, we are going to recapture this province. We're just using a commander, like hold and retreat, just in case Abyssia isn't on the level. They are, from what I recall, but it's yeah, right. Like, we wouldn't want to send our entire army with no mage support, right, to take this province, because if Abyssia decided to hang out with Mortality Grass, well, we've seen that. Otherwise, we are attempting to assassinate. This is a very risky assassination, but I mean, it's like, we got him, like, the army is here, like, let's give it a shot. I think this move I like better, right? Now that the army has moved out, we're really in no danger of being patrolled out on top of the capital. and we did see that there were like some kind of wimpier Furbolg mages who are probably much easier to assassinate than the elves. So I'm hoping that there's a bunch of researcher types that have been left behind at home here, and like we can start assassinating them. So, you know, a good use of an assassin, hopefully upcoming, and then a questionable use of an assassin upcoming with questionable assassin kit all around. Otherwise, continuing to raid with our twice-born Augur Elders, like until TNN deals with this, or until, you know, they lose to some province defense, like we're just going to keep doing this to keep them busy. Like I said, you know, we need a couple turns to actually get our army in motion, or rather to get the research that we need to get our army in motion. And again, I think I've mentioned this, but looking back, like I think should have just gone. This is way too much time to be spending on this. It's funny because Dominion's games are actually quite short, even though they take months to play. So, you know, it always feels like you have more time, or at least for me, you know, as a newer player starting out, I kind of felt like, oh yeah, like I have a lot of time, but you really don't. Like every turn is incredibly precious. So, you know, anytime you spend just sitting around waiting for research goals, that's a pretty momentous decision. And in this case, I think totally would have been worth risking it with the lesser poison resistance. And it's like, if we lose some legionnaires, that's life. You know, we can always recruit some more. But I do hate losing troops. So, you know, that hasn't changed. And that's definitely what's fueling our decision to hang out. Otherwise, like, it doesn't look like there's too much fighting going on with this, like, underwater conflict that we're hoping Niflheim is going to get embroiled in. Like, we really only see this one province that's been raided away. Otherwise, like, it does look like Pelagia has made some inroads. They built a temple at least, although with 2 Shaitan here, like they better hope they have some defense. So, you know, we're going to try to continue to keep an eye on that. We're continuing to kind of push our scout around and get an idea. Like, Russ is looking decently large. This is Satis in here that they've digested. And this is the throne that they pinged. And I think that more or less covers it in terms of our scouting. Yeah, our scouting is like much more focused on our borders. I think, you know, we're doing a better job of that. Definitely previously I had a tendency to send scouts maybe a little too far afield. You know, I do think like 1 or 2 loose, just kind of getting the temperature of the world is a good idea. But generally, like if it's not your neighbor, you know, or maybe a neighbor of a neighbor, it's not as relevant that you be scouting them, and probably not worth the resources. We are trying to figure out like what the situation is with Kalem here. So Kalem is looking relatively small. Kind of hemmed in a bit by Xibalba, which could be relevant, right? Since, you know, well, Abyssia and Kalem were fighting, but, you know, it looks like that is mostly finished now, but, you know, would potentially be a decent target for Abyssia, like, again, in the future, you know, maybe once they get some fire gems off of Eternal Pyre. So, yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 45. All right. EA Ermor, turn 46. We cast Eternal Pyre and it went up successfully. That is very nice. Always good to get a global up. And I think that might be the first global for this channel. I can't remember offhand, but I don't think I had any globals up in the prior games. So we did have to split to get this up, but still an improvement to our position. And we found a magic site, also very nice. This is an astral pearl at least, perhaps more. And then we have our assassination attempt. We didn't get the pretender, so that is definitely good news for our assassin. And like, yeah, this guy's been given a lot of kit. Let's see. Yeah, she has a few gems, so that's dangerous. Could be a water elemental coming out, but otherwise, no kit. Yeah, summon lesser water elemental, but we do get the first hit with the arrow. Is this guy? No, this guy doesn't have the eye of aiming, so, you know, he's just a decent shot. Yeah, maybe has a decent amount of experience, yeah. And that definitely does boost the precision, so, you know, maybe give your bows to your assassins that have been around for a little while. And then, of course, with the black bow, once you get the hit and you deal damage, the caster gets feeble-minded, they can't use their spell casting anymore. So yeah, not the worst assassin kit, but, you know, just maybe over-kitted. We take control, right, this is from Agartha, and so they were on the level, and they left no resistance, no province defense, so do appreciate that. And then we have one of our Augur Elder raids, and I believe this is, yeah, the pair, so they haven't actually lost anything yet, and this is just a little bit of Bear Tribe, I believe, and since we have 2 of them, are these both Death 3s? Let's see, one of them is Death 3, yeah, the other one's only Death 2, but still, I think, yeah, this is going to be more than enough to take down this level of province defense, so that works out for us. It's also nice because Bear Tribe don't have any archers, which are really the primary danger for those Augur Elders. However, we do get counter-raided here in one of the provinces that we'd taken, and possibly even jumped on, although this guy may have just moved into this province. In fact, yeah, must have, because this battle shows up after the other one, and those Augur Elders definitely walked their way over to that province, and like, yeah, just dropped an air elemental on them. I mean, there's a lot of ways that, you know, two of these fellows, these elven thugs, could be killing Augur Elders. A little bit of kit on one of them, but mostly no kit, and like, yeah, just relying on the air elemental, which, like, sure, plenty of ways to kill Augur Elders. So yeah, TNN doing a better job of removing some of our raiders. Of course, you know, part of the reason we're raiding is we want to turn them into white mages, so they'll be more useful chassis for us. So we do get them back as a white mage, and then Machaka does attack Niflheim just with like a small raiding force and only one province defense here, so maybe this war is on. Like, yeah, I think we only unfortunately have like one scout on that border, so it's kind of hard to tell, you know, how hot that war is, because haven't really seen a lot of movement in the last couple turns. And then Russ is clearing out some independents, and I don't think we've seen a ton from them yet, so yeah, let's load this up, especially because like this is actually kind of a nasty independent force, right? And a bunch of whites being led by a Bane Lord, and like, yeah, I mean, these guys have good protection, like they have good skills. The Bane blades can be kind of nasty, although yes, this is a ton of sacreds, so the bears for Russ are sacred, and I'm pretty sure we've discussed this bless before, but just in case we haven't, we'll take a quick look. It's a little on the brutal side, right? Magic resistance always nice, undying extra nice on these big old chassis that already have a lot of hit points, especially when you combine it with Blood Vengeance, right? So every time you're dealing damage is coming back to you. Now you have more hit points to get through. Fire Shield 7, not so great I think on the bears, although kind of decent, and then larger again, providing more hit points. But the Fire Shield I think is probably more, well, I mean, the Bless in general, more for the Skin Shifters. And the Skin Shifters do really well at dealing with like kind of more elite targets, but fewer targets, because they only have the one attack, and especially now that they've been made larger, you can only fit two of these guys in a square, so their attack density was never amazing. But you know, now it's even worse. So you know, things like a bunch of bugs or something like that, you know, just a ton of units would be one way to deal with these guys, but Fire Shield makes that a lot harder, right? The bugs are just going to kill themselves on the Fire Shield. Same with like the skeletons, right? They're going to kill themselves on the Fire Shield. So like, yeah, overall, like I really like this bless. Fairly hefty, so probably had to pay for it in terms of scales. And like, yeah, this is a pretty large force of sacreds. Not too much in the way of mage support. Like, yeah, a little bit of, actually decent amount of mage support. Like 5 mages back here. And looks like a Holy 3, which is the most critical thing. And like, yeah, is able to roll over this independent force quite easily. And it looks like although Satis has lost their capital, they're not out of it completely. So Satis sends, yeah, just a raiding force, unfortunately, into that same force that we just saw, and I think there is absolutely no way that this works out for them. They do include 2 of their mages. I'm less familiar with Satis. I don't think the Reborns are their like more expensive mages, so like, yeah, this is a fairly decent raiding party. And of course, having like a little bit of chaff beforehand like helps the skeleton numbers like build up. So yeah, I do kind of like that. I'm not sure overall, like I don't actually think it's that expensive, because some of these are like pre-summoned undead. But of course, like, yeah, against all of this, and we'll be able to see, right, like these undead, I think, wow, they're also getting banished, but like, yeah, the Blood Vengeance, the Fire Shield, the everything, like they're just gonna disappear. So like, yeah, I think normally like skeleton spam against these guys would be decent, but with the Fire Shield, I'm thinking probably not as useful, which is definitely relevant for us if we ever tangle with Russ, because skeleton spamming, you know, I mean, we got that from Satis, right, in the lore, so, you know, that's also a thing that we do, and then it's not going to be such a great answer, right? And this is our overcommitment against the barbarians. In my defense, it is 60 barbarians, and that gets a little on the scary side, so it's really just the flaming arrows, right? Probably unnecessary, but, you know, hey, at least we absolutely obliterate them, so that's nice. Slingers aren't great, but, you know, barbarians is probably a better use case for slingers, so we take no losses there other than the research. I actually don't think we lose the gem because we used a fire jar. So just a little bit of research lost, not the end of the world. We have an unexpected event, find 2 water gems. I will take it with misfortune scales, and yeah, I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Another kind of slow turn. Like I said, we're going to be hanging out until we get that research. So we're bringing our army home. We are pushing out another Twiceborn mage to harass TNN with. And then we're continuing to do our raiding, although now that they're actually moving out some units to counter raid, we're probably going to be losing our Augur Elders a lot more quickly. But again, that's kind of the point of this exercise, half the point of this exercise. But we are fairly low on death gems, so we're probably not going to be able to exert pressure like this for much longer. But we probably only need like 3 more turns, maybe even 2 turns if we start moving out a little ahead of schedule. It is looking like our research isn't going to increase to the level that we need it to pull off 3 turns. Although we are forging some lightless lanterns, so that's kind of where the majority of our increased fire income is coming from. Let's take a look. What is the global situation? Okay, so Tianqi has Mother Oak, and then Machaka has Eyes of God, and now we have Eternal Pyre. Of course, Abyssia has half of that Eternal Pyre. And that is kind of an interesting wrinkle of splitting globals. It can be a way to like reduce pressure or heat on a player, because to anyone else like looking at this, right, they're like, yeah, Ermor, they're getting 20 fire gems a turn, but that is not totally true, because from now on we're going to send 10 fire gems to Abyssia every turn. So that's the majority of it. Otherwise, like just pushing around some site searchers. We have not looked at recruitment for a little while. We're not recruiting any more troops, which I think is a good thing. We have more than enough troops for the amount of territory that we hold. Like, would we like a second or a third army? Of course. Can we afford those? Not really. We're doing okay in terms of the income to upkeep ratio, but it's not fantastic. We are still recruiting Equite, of course. Major recruitment, we've moved more over to Augur Elders, right? So we're still trying to push out a decent amount of Augur Elders. I think our other 2 forts, it's about, an even split roughly. So our other forts are pushing out Augurs. And then, of course, we are getting Lizard Shamans, the only repeat recruitment that I have turned on. So that's kind of where our recruitment is at. And then, I've talked about how, we're digging in this province. So we're building a temple here this turn, and we're still working on our palisade, which is going to finish at about the same time as our research. So that's kind of nice. And then otherwise, continuing to scout around. I don't think we've found anything too interesting, although we did see that Satis is not completely out of it. They do at least have, 1 fort, although that said, their capital's down here. So I got to imagine, the majority of their territory is probably gone, especially because we know, Helheim is up here, which did get taken, but it didn't get taken by Satis. So there just isn't really too much more room for them. I also think, I'm pretty sure this is actually Macone, but we don't know that at this point, but we do know that Satis probably doesn't extend that much farther. So I do think Russ is going to be finished with Satis relatively soon. Probably not relevant for us, but I mean, Russ is actually pretty close to our capital. We only have a 1 province border, so in a lot of ways that that war doesn't make sense for either of us. But once they decide to deal with this throne, well, then we actually have a more significant border, and we're in pretty close proximity. So, there's a reason that we're scouting Russ and, trying to figure out what they're up to and what's going on with them. So definitely going to want to keep an eye on that. And the other thing is I was saying, Pelagia has to worry about those Shaitan, but they actually have a monolith here. I feel like we may have already seen this monolith, but he's hanging out, and fortification is under construction. So it looks like Pelagia is here to stay. And not only are they here to stay, it looks like, they took this province that was raided away from them by those Shaitan last turn. So possibly those Shaitan are dead now, or more likely they, just chose to go somewhere else. But anyway, this looks like a much more serious conflict than, the one that we saw up here to the north. Although that said, we do see another Oceania flag on land up here, which probably was taken from Niflheim. And we see, a Jotun werewolf who's probably a thug and probably has things to say about this coastal presence. So this war is definitely still ongoing. And then, of course, the other thing too, Machaka has pushed in. Yomi isn't quite finished, but mostly dead. I think at least at the moment, Niflheim is a bit busy, which is good, because we're taking our time getting rid of TNN, and then after that we really kind of need to get rid of Agartha. Like it's like such a dagger like into the rest of our territory, like especially if we end up taking all of TNN's territory. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 46.